it's just become an institution now where folks in the area, the local truckers, love to participate. They donate money for the Make-A-Wish. They like, of course, to show off their rigs, and the local people in the area enjoy walking around the trucks before they convoy, and then being along the route as they all go by, because it's not very often you get to see 650 trucks all shined up in a row.
It's Todd Dills. We are back a little early this week with a special edition of Overdrive Radio, part of our weekly 60th anniversary series of stories with a significant historical aspect, as this one's got, no doubt, in spades. It features the voice of former trucker George Ruelens, telling his tale about what's become a veritable phenomenon out of Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, the annual Mother's Day truck convoy benefiting the Make-A-Wish Foundation. In 2019, the convoy featured 650 trucks in its 30th year. It's a huge amount of growth over the course of 3 decades from the first one. With last year's event sidelined amid the initial COVID outbreak, the 2021 event on May 9 upcoming should be every bit as impressive. Find a link in the show notes to a registration page to participate and or donate. I talked with George Ruelens 2 years back now about his own experience of that very first Mother's Day Make-A-Wish convoy in Pennsylvania, which featured 42 trucks from local companies. He happened to have been driving for Ned Bard and Sons at the time, and in our conversation looked back fondly on the day and subsequent editions of the convoy, which have created so many memories for children involved. The truckers too, no doubt, and members of the community in the area. Here's Ruelens setting the stage for his life at the time of our talk, and his participation 3 decades earlier in that first Make-A-Wish Lancaster County convoy, just after this brief message from Overdrive Radio's sponsor.
First Guard provides commercial truck insurance to leased owner-operators done right, as we've done for more than 80 years. We provide physical damage and non-trucking. Many companies make you pay up to 6 months of insurance premiums up front, but not First Guard. We bill monthly, so you get quality insurance without needing to pay a lot of cash up front. Go to firstguard.com. That's 1stguard.com. First Guard. We speak trucker. Let's talk.
Currently, my wife and I have been full-time in a motorhome for 17 years, and we like to tell people we have a small home but a big yard. We enjoy traveling, and we've been very fortunate to be able to do that. But we back up many years. In Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, I was just turning 21 years old, working for a poultry company, and they posted on the bulletin board an ad for a tractor trailer driver for their in-house fleet. And some folks in the maintenance shop said I should put my name in for it, and I applied for that job. When they interviewed me, they asked me how much trucking experience I had, and I replied I never drove one, but I rode in one for 3 miles. They said they'd rather have somebody with no habits than bad habits. We'll let you ride along with other drivers for 5 weeks, and then we'll give you a truck. And that's exactly what happened. And I started off trucking, hauling live poultry in wooden coops that were tied down with ropes. And we had 522 coops on a load, and I did that job for about 7,000 loads of live chickens, and then I transferred to another local trucking company that had flatbeds, vans, and taut liners, which are curtain-sided vans. And that's the company that I got involved with the Make-A-Wish convoy. In 1989, I had heard through some source that they were forming this convoy for Make-A-Wish, and I mentioned it to the owners of the company, and they agreed to get a tractor and trailer washed up, and they said that I was allowed to participate. I was a company driver, and that's how it all started, Todd.
Yeah. And I think there were I think the way that the folks at Make-A-Wish tell the stories that there were 42 trucks involved. Does that sound right to you? And paint the scene there for me in terms of your participation in it.
Well, I think 42 is getting pretty close, and that's certainly very small compared to the last convoy they had on Mother's Day with 650 trucks. But we started it with 42 tractor trailers, all from different companies in the local area there, and we met at a place called the Lancaster Shopping Center, which barely fit our 40 semis and nowhere nearly would accommodate the 650 today. And we all parked in there and lined up, and of course folks were walking around the trucks and admiring them all shined up. And at some point in time, Make-A-Wish had a few children that have health conditions, and they had expressed a desire to ride in a tractor trailer. So the good fortune was one of these young boys was assigned to my Peterbilt tractor. And I can still remember, because of his health issues, adults helped place him up in the passenger seat of the conventional Peterbilt. My wife was along that day, so the only seat left for her was on the edge of the bunk facing forward, and of course I was in the driver's seat. The one fond memory I have, Todd, is we're getting ready to go out on a convoy trip, and the desire of any young child is to blow the air horn, so we took a piece of cord and tied it onto the air horn and strung it across the cab over to where the young boy was sitting in the passenger seat. And for the next 2.5 hours, he had complete control of the air horn and enjoyed that a lot. And I imagine the air horn needed rebuilt when we were done with that trip. We all pulled out of that shopping center, and back 30 years ago, the convoy followed a different route. So anybody that's local or familiar with this Mother's Day tradition knows where they go today. But that first trip went up Highway 283 towards Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. We got off up at High Spire and then came back the two-lane road through the small towns, Highway 230, through Elizabethtown and Mount Joy and Landisville. But all along the route, on the highway, the overpasses were lined with spectators, all waving, and coming through the small towns on the return trip, all the sidewalks were lined with people, all waving, and of course, the Make-A-Wish child in my truck just waving constantly for 2.5 hours and then blowing that air horn repeatedly. A lot of good memories, Todd.
What was the what was the name of the company that you were working for at the time?
The company with the truck that I was in called Ned Bard and Son, and I believe that they are still in business today.
You know, it's still even at in that very first convoy. It sounds like it did bring out the community. Eh?
They had announced to the community ahead of time, so that's where all the spectators came from. I only drove in the first convoy and actually got out of trucking shortly after that. But for quite a few years, when my children were small, we would go out near where they assemble and enjoy watching them all pull out for the convoy and waving at all the big shiny trucks. It's become quite a tradition in the Lancaster County, Pennsylvania area, and of course has grown to what they think is now the world's largest truck convoy.
Right, and there's other events around the nation that do similar, that similarly benefit Make-A-Wish, and yeah, it's grown into like a pretty amazing thing.
Yeah, it raises a lot of money for the Make-A-Wish organization and provides a lot of special experiences for young children that obviously have not been blessed with good health.
You got out of trucking. What did you? I think you were probably in it for a good decade or so. Am I right about that? Just doing the back of the envelope calculations here. A little more than that, probably.
I was in the truck for 17 years, and then had a desire to do something else, and actually climbed out of the Peterbilt after 17 years and went into the college classroom and got a degree, and then started teaching 5th grade in a public school. And that's quite a change from a Peterbilt to having 29 10-year-olds staring at you all day long, but that was a great experience also. A lot of factors came together, Todd, that convinced my wife and I that life is short. And after 9 years of teaching, I quit my job. My wife quit her job. We sold the house, and that's when we started RVing. My wife was 45. I was 47 years old, and people wonder how you can do that, but we enjoyed working a little bit on the road and then parking somewhere without hookups where there's no costs, and just enjoying life, working a little and playing a lot. And that's what we did for the first 12 years on the road. And now these last 5 years, we feel that we've been so blessed that we volunteer here in Southern California in the winter. And in the summer, we travel to the Pacific Northwest and we volunteer in Oregon state parks, trying to give back a little bit.
Yeah, you were telling me, I think, that you're getting ready to make that trip up to the Northwest for the summer here pretty soon.
That's correct, and the state parks that we hang out in the summer in Oregon are right on the coast. And
sure.
Most days the temperature doesn't exceed 65 degrees, so we've become quite spoiled enjoying the microclimates out west. And
you've kept up your commercial driver's license all these years too, haven't you?
Yeah, I have, and for these years while we've been motorhoming and RVing and obviously trying to make some money, I've used my CDL in a variety of ways. I've transported folks to whitewater rafting trips on the Snake River in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. I drove a mobile classroom around the state of Pennsylvania for a cyber school. Multiple times I hauled on the harvest in North Dakota and Wyoming for sugar beets and corn and soybeans and things like that. Enjoyed finding opportunities to use my CDL for, say, 3 to 6 weeks at a time, and then park the truck and go have fun.
Ruelens also reflected on his origins further in trucking, including a story about the Dodge cabover he started in, hauling live poultry.
You know, when I was 21 years old, when I turned 21 and was working in maintenance, I had no idea that I was going to be a truck driver. I always thought big trucks looked kind of neat going down the road, and when that posting occurred at the poultry company I was working at, and those guys encouraged me to apply for it, I had no idea that I'd spend 17 years in a big truck. I certainly have no regrets. I indirectly met my wife through the truck, and it was certainly meant to be. I've followed trucking even though I'm not directly involved. I get the Overdrive emails every day and the Overdrive magazine, and I try to stay in touch with the industry. And I realize what the men and women have today is much different than what we had back then. Their rides are certainly much better as far as the trucks, but I think the conditions are much more demanding. I'll just leave you with this. My very first tractor after that 5 weeks of training had a 220 Cummins with a clogged fuel filter, and I actually came to hills that I couldn't get up in first gear, and I had to back off of and turn around and find a different route. They told me I was a kid and I didn't know how to shift it. When it idled, the turn signals would stop blinking and the radio would stop playing because it wasn't charging enough. And there was not a piece of vinyl anywhere inside the cab. Everything was metal, and we were sure proud of that AM radio and that was hanging on the ceiling, and the CB radio that was hanging on the ceiling that shook so bad going down the road you couldn't even see what channel the CB was turned to. But we were trucking and we enjoyed it. Fast forward to today, 650 drivers enjoy showing off their beautiful trucks, but making memories for young children that just haven't been blessed with good health.
Yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for that memory. That's that first truck of yours. Wow. What was it? What was the? You remember the make and model?
If you can picture the ugliest, squarest, boxiest cab over ever made, called by the company Dodge, and actually the fifth wheels were mounted on 4x4 blocks, which were then U-bolted down to the frame. The fifth wheel actually sat on top of a 4x4 wooden block, and they were extremely ugly, extremely boxy, and oh golly, so many memories of those things. But you know, when you were driving when it was cold, the hot air's blowing out at your right foot, it's sweating, and your left foot is so cold you can't move your toes on your left foot. And as I said, that first truck, I didn't know what to expect, but I literally got to hills I could not get up. And they just told me I was a kid. I didn't know how to shift it. And finally, one night, I loaded a load of live chickens that would normally take 45 minutes to get to the plant. I left the farm, never pulled the button up on the 10-speed Road Ranger, and it took me 3.5 hours to do a trip that normally would take 45 minutes. And when I got into the plant, I told them I might be a kid, I might not know how to shift this thing, but it just doesn't have any power. And that's when they investigated it and found the clogged fuel filter on that mighty 220 Cummins.
Finally.
They gave me a truck. They gave me a truck that night that had just been overhauled, a 250 Cummins Dodge cab over, and I took it out, and it seemed like an Indy racer to me after what I had just been driving.
Love stories like that, though I'm sure experiencing it wasn't. Thanks again to George for the memories. If you're catching this one straight from the Overdrive Radio feed, get on over to overdriveonline.com/trucking-history to check out some of the pictures Ruelens was kind enough to share with us from his personal history, including some from that very first Make-A-Wish convoy event. And if you're participating in this year's event in Pennsylvania, here's a big thanks to you for what you do to support the kids. Overdrive Radio is a production of Overdrive, the voice of the American trucker for 60 years. The podcast is produced by me, Todd Dills, with no small amount of support from Paul Marhofer, Max Heine, Holly Young, and Matt Cole. Until next time, keep it pro out there.